When we move to the individual process, we move to the uniqueness of the mutative way. Everything about the individual circuitry that exists in a human being is so that we are a mutative platform for the evolution of life. The 43rd gate is part of the channel of individuality. And in this channel of individuality, the real task is that in the moment of insight, in the moment that the 43rd gate has a new conceptualization, the difficulty of trying to have to explain that. The real fear of the 43rd gate is expressed in the keynote of the channel. It's about genius to freak. The vast majority of individuals feel like they are outsiders and live in fear of being rejected. This is a deep anxiety that lies at the core of the 43rd gate, that its insight will be rejected, but more than that individuality is so personal, that they are being rejected. That when the individual cannot explain themselves successfully, that they can be shunned, that they can be exiled, that they can be not permitted to enter into the group or be welcome. For many who carry this energy, it is often better to swallow their own knowing than to face the fear of being rejected. Every individual child, every individual mental child learns this when they're very young, because they automatically say, I know. And of course, when they're young, chances are they may not know. And they get put in their place for that. They get rejected for that. It is very, very frightening for them. They do not want to be on the outside, and yet they are different on the inside and need to find a way to merge.
Hello there, and welcome to Dharma Science Radio. I hope you enjoyed that little quote from Ra Uru Hu, and my special thanks to Jacqueline, Loki, and Jiva for being and doing what they do as part of Jovian Archive and propagating the knowledge of human design. And if you would like to hear and even watch more of Ra like that in long format, check out ra.tv, which I'll have a link for down below. Just putting it out there. I am very much open to a sponsorship and or collaboration opportunity to work with the Jovian Archive and help propagate this knowledge. Putting that out there. So have you ever felt that before? Like what Ra was talking about, that feeling of the fear of rejection, this feeling that maybe you have this individual insight within yourself and boom, I know, and oh, turns out I didn't know, and people were unhappy about that. They thought I did wrong because of that. Have you ever felt something like that? Because I know I have. I happen to be a hanging gate 43. And being able to accept that these mechanics that I was born with, witnessing them unfold in life, is not something that's wrong. And so there's a whole lot we can dive into about this nature of fear, and even the nature of the higher mind. Now, there's been a lot spoken about this over time. There's a lot that's been said by our strategic ancestors and our receptive brothers and sisters who have taken new interpretation of ancient wisdom in various different ways. And so what I love the most about human design is the capacity that human design gives us to see ancient wisdom merged and synthesized with modern science and put them together into a new basis of knowledge. And so what about fear? What about fear? Well, let me share this with you right here. This is the software called Neutrino Design, and this is what I use in my readings. Currently, this is a chart builder, which allows me to play with all kinds of different pieces and parts here. And so what we're looking at is called the 9-centered human body graph. This is a modern interpretation of the classical 7-centered yoga chakras and now it's evolved into 9 energy centers. We have recognized a difference from the past. And so you might see here that in this Ajna center, in this splenic center, and in this solar plexus center, there are black lines emanating out from these shapes, these triangles. These represent different gates in these energy centers. And each one of these has a fear, a nervousness, and an anxiety that is related with them. In the spleen, we find the fundamental survival fears. In the ajna, we find anxieties about time. And in the solar plexus, we have that feeling of nervousness. And so each one of these are fundamentally a form of fear from each one of these awareness centers. The awareness center is functionally where awareness is created. And so the root center here, the physical adrenal pressure of life, the stress of life, the sacral center here, the generative life force energy principle, the heart here, the ego, the G center, which holds together reality itself as we know it, the throat center, all about communication and transformation, as well as the head center, which is all about inspiration to think. None of these centers are actually aware in and of themselves. None of those functions bring awareness to who and what we are, according to human design. And so when we're looking at the splenic center here, you'll see that they're all lined up in the top right quarter of this wheel. And these splenic gates are the fundamental fears of survival that I have mentioned earlier. Each one of them represents their own individual fear, such as the 44th gate right here, which is all about the fear of tomorrow, the fear of extinction, the fear of not only am I going to die, but are we all going to die? Are we all doomed? And so what is the point of that? What is the point of having this gate here that is afraid of what's going to come, and are we all doomed? Well, the fundamental purpose of fear through the lens of human design is that fear is the driving force behind intelligence. Because we fear for our survival, we must learn, become intelligent, know how to respond to our environment, and thus survive. And so that's basically the essence of what is here in this splenic center, on a very general, basic level, is that we have fears, and these allow us to survive. Because when is this fear happening in the spleen? Well, it's only right now. When we're talking about the organs of the spleen, we're talking about the lymphatic system, we're talking about the immune system, we're talking about the spleen itself. And so this has to do with right now existential awareness. This is not concepts. This is not thinking. This is not ideas. This energy center links us with all living creatures on the planet alive today. All the birds, the bees, the insects, the mammals, the trees. Every single one of these organisms has a splenic center within its design, and we share this awareness in the now with them. This is about survival, fundamentally. How does that differ from the Ajna center, one might ask? Well, the Ajna center up here, you can see it's sprawled about the body graph, or rather it's sprawled around the wheel. The Ajna center relates to all time itself. Only 1/3 of it is personal. 2/3 of it is collective. And so the challenge is with taking things personally or not. Getting confused between what actually belongs to one and what belongs to the other, or what belongs somewhere else. Because this is all time that the mind and concepts belong to. And so the story goes of human design, about 90,000 years ago, this Ajna chakra evolved as the newest awareness center. This is what differentiated Neanderthal humans from the anatomically modern human, the Cro-Magnon. And so then from that, I would say that the Neanderthal human did not think like we do. They did not create concepts. They did not talk. This was, unga, arga, or ha. Perhaps they could have something like that at most. And then 90,000 years happened. Human, as we know it today, was born. And we have this ajna. And now what is this ajna doing? This ajna is remembering the past and attempting to make sense out of it. This ajna is projecting into the future, trying to build a logical pattern for success. This ajna is receiving spontaneous insight in the moment that no one has ever heard before, and yet it is the strike of lightning that makes fire that is then carried by the collective forward strategically for survival and dominance on the earth and this material plane. It's basically why humanity became the top dog of this planet. We killed everything, or so many things. Some people say the human experience on this planet, for the planet, has been a mass extinction event because of how many species we humans have killed by our existence. And so something that's very different around splenic fears, ajna fears, is the relativity of it all. The spleen is in the now, period. It doesn't argue, doesn't debate, simply right now. Cold care. You know, this is like a mama bear that's willing to kill an invader because it threatens her cubs. She's not thinking, oh, how dare they? It's simply the intuitive, instinctual, logical, tasteful awareness that this is a danger to my cubs. I'm going to kill you because my cubs aren't being eaten. Not today. Whereas here in the Ajna chakra, here in this Ajna center, there are now concepts. There is now the past. There is now the present. There is now the future. Now we can talk about these things. We can imagine and we can remember. And this allows for all kinds of different fears to pop up. You know, I've heard about people on their deathbed, or maybe a couple years before that, hopefully on the deathbed, there's this realization that unfolds. However, I've heard of people in their 70s and their 80s that are still complaining and bickering about something that happened when they were in high school. Like it's still a big deal in their life, and it's a problem. And it comes from this Ajna center here. It comes from conceptualizing across all time itself, and then essentially becoming identified with and attached to, becoming stagnant around a thought, an idea, a person, a place, a thing, a happenstance, a story, an opinion, or a judgment. And then getting stuck and attached and identified and stuck and attached and identified and bringing it back up and bringing it back up. And over all time, through decades even, people have done that. And strategically, this was of value in the past. This is the real big difference here, is that in the year 1781, it's about 200 years ago or something like that, there was an evolution in the human energetic structure. It was not obvious to the physical body. It was not immediately obvious to the thinking mind, because society conditions us so strongly to think with our heads, you know, to make up your mind, go out there and make it happen. And for the vast majority of humanity, that is simply not the way. For you see, with this advent of the nine-centered evolution, which occurred in 1781. Now, not only do we have 9 energy centers as distinct from the 7 chakras of classic yoga, there is also the projector aura type, which is here to recognize vibrational mechanics and thereby bring about the signature of success. We were also brought the tones 4, 5, and 6 really into the forefront. These are the tones of receptivity. For you see, 90,000 years of human existence, we were purely strategic in our tonal configuration. It was the highest strategy in classical yoga to become receptive. And yet for each of us alive today, this is our birthright. We are born receptive. And this is fundamentally what marks the difference between the higher and the lower mind. And now this is where I'm stretching into a bit of an analogy here perhaps, or at least I'm experimenting a little bit. You know, I'm stretching and pushing and connecting and synthesizing in my own way. When I say that fundamentally the awareness of the solar plexus represents the higher mind of humanity, and more than that, the higher mind of life itself. The ajna representing something much more human, something much more concerned with the past, the present, and the future, and what's going on, and how do we get from here to there, and what is actually happening. Wow, why did that happen? Oh, wow, look at that, something brand new just happened. Now this is incredible. And going back into the splenic awareness, I would call this the lower mind. This is like our carnal mind. This is like this is like pure survival itself at any and all costs, because we're terrified and we're going to survive. And this is, well, essentially this is millions and millions of years of fear. Every living organism, you know, everything greater than the single cell has had a splenic center. So all the fears from all those different biological life forms, right in there, in that splenic center. So there's a lot going on there, and it's all right now. It's all about survival, fundamentally. And it's deeply about fear. This is why I call it the lower mind. Not in a judgmental way. There's nothing wrong with fear. Fear is incredibly important. Without fear, we would not survive. Not on this material world, after all. I mean, people are killing each other. And beyond that, what is order to the spider is chaos to the fly. What is order to the bear is chaos to the salmon. And there are endless, endless, endless examples of this in life. The relativity of duality. We've got lose-lose, we've got win-win, we've got win-lose, lose-win, and now we're opening up into win-win-win, which could of course have lose-lose-lose on the other side. And yet there is the potential to find the win-win-win, where I win in a situation, you win in the situation, and the bigger picture wins in the situation. This is, I believe, the fundamental goal of the solar plexus and the nature of the awareness that is possible here. Because the real magic of this solar plexus awareness is that in its truest and purest sense, it is not even human. It's what the voice called or shown to Ra as rave, R-A-V-E, which is, it's a term for part of our future, in a sense, and part of a future that goes beyond us as humans. And a big part of that is the nature of what it means to have emotions. So I could call it the future human, or I could call it the next stage of evolution for life itself. At any rate, the nature of emotions has gone through a dramatic shift. For us humans alive today, our emotions are a motor, primarily ignorant, lacking in awareness, lacking in development. And it's a motor pushing energy around. And what is it pushing energy around for? Well, for the 36, it's diving into brand new experiences that has no idea what it's doing. For the 37, it's all about, well, how do we communicate with each other? How do we talk to each other? We can work this out. You know, it's okay. You know, we're a good community here. For the 6, well, you know, it's deeply sexual. It can be really related to how we achieve union, how we break down the barriers. And what kind of friction will we find along the way towards ultimately mating? This 55 is about the individual human spirit. This is about the individual spirits of abundance or of lack. And the nature that abundance is a question strictly of the spirit. And that when we find abundance, we notice it's in our spirit, it's in our mind, it's in our feelings, it's in the way we see, it's in the way we think. There is an abundance all around us. You know, there's more and 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 more. Whether that's more and more hamburgers, french fries, and cheeseburgers, or whether that's more yoga, meditation, human design, or whether that's building cabins, working in the garden, maintaining a greenhouse, or any number of other things. And there's more and more and more of it. You see, this is the nature of the Maya that we live in. We give all these words to things. We think we know what we're talking about. And we keep adding more to it, and we keep adding more to it because we think we know what we're talking about, and we're making up new words, and we're figuring things out, and it keeps getting more and more dense, and there's more and more that's going on. And so with this solar plexus here, in us humans, it's a motor pushing us around for all this kind of stuff. And there is no truth in the now. The solar plexus is a motor, it's pushing us around. There is only relative clarity to be found over time. And yet for the pure rave, things are different. This motor function of the solar plexus has been flattened into a plane. It has been flattened into a level ground where it no longer pushes things around. It has lost that motor function. And it has taken on a pure awareness function. And now if you're an emotional authority being, you might have some idea of what that could feel like in your imagination. And so my invitation to you is to explore that thought experiment as a meditation, if you will. What would it mean if these emotions that are a motor that push me around without me knowing really what's going on in the moment, because I have to wait to really be with myself and understand. What if it was a flat plane of all the rich depth that is felt along the way of the up and the down and the up and the down and the up and down of all these emotions and these feelings and how everything is so relative? Imagine if you had access to that entire field all at once. That's what I see from the rave children. And the factor of that is it's why there's at least 3 to 5 of them that come together to form a penta, which is consciously aware. And you see, the rave children on their own, there's little I can say. For an individual rave child to be born after 2027. Because they're basically fully surrendered to God, to their God, to the bigger picture, to life. They are fully surrendered. They are not with an individual sense of self until you put them together. It's said that as soon as you get 3 to 5 of them together, they lock up, and it will become nearly impossible to separate these children from each other. You see, their auric mechanism functions differently than us. Their solar plexus has a connection through what is being called the autive circuit, whether that's AU as in gold or AU as in autistic, I do not know. It is the autive circuit, and it allows them to lock in with one another to form a conscious penta. And then you've got a life force that has multiple bodies, where it is taking advantage of all that solar plex awareness in each of those bodies. And it is a whole order of magnitude of difference compared to us as humans, you know? Wherein I'm here in my little mind and I have my thoughts, and you're over there in your mind and you have your thoughts, and we don't really seem to sense so often that you can read my mind and I can talk to you telepathically. It doesn't seem to happen so often, does it? Whereas for the rave children, they share the inside. So it's a very different life. And for me, that's a lot of what it means to be connected to the higher mind, to be connected with your higher mind and your potential for solar plex awareness. I believe that each and every human being alive today has the potential for solar plexus awareness, at least in a prototype stage in one form or another. We are Homo sapien intransitus, according to Ra's terminology. We are no longer simply Homo sapien, Homo sapien. We are Homo sapien intransitus. We are this and that on its way. So there's something totally new happening here. And it's my invitation to you to reach out if you'd like to learn more about what any of this means for you specifically. I'm sure you saw in that quote earlier how deep Ra can go into a single gate, its channel, and what's going on there. We can talk about so many details here that I'm learning to not get caught up in the details and to share a bigger picture that's hopefully of value to you. So if you'd like to learn more, feel free to reach out down below. I've got a link down there somewhere. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Take care. Bye for now. If you have enjoyed the show and would like to learn more about how all of this applies specifically to you, then kindly refer to the link in this video's description, Private Consultation. Here, we can dive into all of the details together in a recorded call. May your signature vibration of satisfaction, success, peace, and surprise find you in a good way.